The hearing will now come to order, and I'd like to thank each of our witnesses for being with us here today to take time from their busy schedules, and we do look forward to your testimony. Today we're going to examine innovative ways that small businesses contribute to energy production. Specifically, we're going to look at advanced biofuels such as cellulosic ethanol and new innovative technology companies that have developed to produce energy from previously used materials. We're also going to look at the role of research and development in spurring innovative technology. Today's topic is one of significant importance for our nation. As we all know, energy is critical to our economy. Economic prosperity in the United States is closely tied to the availability of reliable, affordable energy supplies. This is not a new issue. The way we discuss it, however, has changed. In recent years, we've seen energy prices skyrocket. You only need to look at the sign at your local service station when you fill your gas tank or read the bottom line on your home heating fuel bills to see how much more we are paying for energy now compared to just 10 years ago. This puts tremendous strain on American families and small businesses. In order for us to take steps forward, we must reduce our dependence on foreign sources of energy and develop new, homegrown energy solutions right here in our own home communities. That is why this hearing on innovative energy solutions is so important. I do not believe that the search for new energy sources should be a zero-sum game when we foster one industry to the detriment of another. Our economy is driven by energy, and we must take a balanced approach to exploring ways to meet our energy needs. That means looking for ways to increase production of everything we need, including oil, natural gas, and coal, in addition to renewable energy like advanced biofuels, wind, and solar energy. As has been shown in almost all industries in the United States, small businesses can be the catalyst that drives innovation to new and better technology. New technologies harness energy that we did not have the capabilities to be able to utilize before. There are many exciting developments in the biofuel, wind, solar, and hydroelectric industries. Colorado is a national wind energy leader and has lots of small businesses who are finding innovative ways to be able to be successful. One of these Colorado small businesses employs 24 people and is leading the way in direct drive generator technology for wind turbines, which I understand will be more reliable, more efficient, lower weight, and lower cost than competing technologies, and will reduce the cost of energy. Having said that, businesses in the wind industry are not immune from the same challenges faced by other businesses, and one of the biggest complaints that I continue to hear from wind energy developers is the need for certainty from the Federal Government. Vestas, which is a major employer in my district, has warned that it could lay off as many as 1,600 Colorado workers, and wind project developers have essentially put their plans on hold until the Federal Government acts. Wind is critical to the all-of-the-above energy approach, and I believe Congress must provide certainty necessary so that this industry can continue to have economic growth and protect American jobs. I will continue to support these jobs and push for this timely solution. The advancement of new technologies moves us towards an all-of-the-above energy policy and greater energy independence that grows our economy and is able to create American jobs. Just last week, I introduced H.R. 4381, Planning for American Energy Act of 2012. This legislation represents a true all-of-the-above energy plan that embraces all of America's vast energy resources. The bill strengthens our energy security by requiring the Secretary of Interior to be able to develop a strategic plan every 4 years on how to responsibly develop our federal onshore energy resources, including oil, natural gas, coal, wind, solar, hydropower, geothermal, oil shale, biomass, and other minerals, so that we can meet the needs of the United States energy needs. We live in a country with tremendous natural resources, and I firmly believe that we can responsibly develop alternative sources of fuel along with our more traditional sources. And I believe that this legislation will help foster that development. Again, I'd like to thank each of you for taking the time to be able to be with us here today. I look forward to hearing your testimony, and I now yield to Ranking Member Kritz for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. In the last year, energy prices have been predictably unpredictable. Since October, oil prices skyrocketed from $80 per barrel to $110, resulting in higher costs at the pump. With a gallon of gas near $4, alternative energy sources have again become critical, and in many regards it is small businesses that are leading the way. Whether it is developing renewable biofuels or creating innovative technologies, entrepreneurs are essential to our nation's energy future. Across the country, small businesses are working to develop new energy sources and rethink existing fossil fuels. As a result, these firms have become agents of change in the energy sector, generating new ideas and the jobs that come with them. Perhaps in no area are small firms as critical as they are in the biodiesel sector. An overwhelming number of its production facilities are true small businesses, as approximately 90% meet the definition of a small producer. Since 2005, the 3.4 billion gallons of biodiesel produced in the U.S. have displaced an equivalent amount of imported diesel fuel. Not only does this reduce our dependence on foreign energy sources and decrease greenhouse gas emissions, but it also supports nearly 40,000 jobs. Another area where small firms are playing a key role is in the development of innovative technologies related to traditional energy sources. This is clearly evident with regard to natural gas exploration. Shell gas, in particular, has created new jobs for local drilling service companies and regional heavy equipment companies. As they grow, so do the local economies they are located in, creating demand for restaurants, hotels, and other service companies. Today, I am looking forward to hearing how we can support these businesses. To ensure that progress continues on all of these fronts, we have to make certain that policies are in place to support small firms and their research, whether they are family farms harvesting the raw materials for biodiesel or their manufacturing partners. It also means continued investment in research that will ensure traditional fossil fuels can be used in an environmentally efficient and friendly manner. Determining the proper mix of these policies is often challenging, and that is why today's hearing is so timely. I am also looking forward to understanding what barriers these innovative companies are facing, as well as determining if government should play a role or simply get out of the way. In some energy sectors, government action has been useful, while in others it may have been less so. In this regard, small business challenges are our challenges, and ensuring that they continue to play a pivotal role in the energy industry is vital. The reality is that the more domestic options we have for energy, the better for everyone. With all of these alternatives on the table, the U.S. is better positioned to reduce its dependence on foreign oil over the long term. Today, it could be biodiesel and ethanol, natural gas, and soon clean coal. No one has a crystal ball, and our energy needs will surely grow, so it is essential that we diversify our energy supply as much as possible. Entrepreneurs remain at the forefront of these changes, not only as consumers, but as researchers, developers, and innovators. This role is natural for them, and I look forward to hearing about the inroads they are making in this critical area during today's hearing. Again, I thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Well, thank you, and I'd like to take a moment to be able to explain our timing lights for you. You will each receive 5 minutes to be able to deliver your testimony, and the light will start out as green. When you have 1 minute remaining, the light will turn yellow, and finally it will turn red at the end of your 5 minutes, and you'll be escorted out if you exceed that. I'm kidding. We will certainly let you wrap up your testimony. So I would like to start out introducing Mr. Ralph Tomaso. He is our first witness. He is CEO of Greenworks Holding, LLC in Wind Gap, Pennsylvania. After graduating from the New York University, Ralph began his career in the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and later as a restaurateur. When he saw what was to become of the waste that was generated at the restaurant, he researched and developed a better way to be able to utilize that waste and created Environmental Energy Recycling Corporation. EERC, a member company of Greenworks Holdings, LLC, gathers biological waste, fat oils, and greases from the food industry and transforms it into clean-burning biofuels to promote a healthier environment and to be able to promote America's energy independence. Last year, EERC combined with a similar company in Lehigh Valley, Smarter Fuels, and created Greenworks, LLC. Thank you for being here, Mr. Tomaso, and if you'd like to give your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Kritz, and other distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the privilege to address you guys today. My name is Ralph Tomaso, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Greenworks Holdings. My partner, Dave Dunham, and I are very proud of what we have built. A little over a year ago, we had 30 employees, primarily in Pennsylvania, and today we have 153 employees in the Northeast and the Southeast. When Dave and I each began our companies in 2005, we set out to change the way fat, oils, and grease waste were used in this country. We envisioned waste being diverted from the animal feed industry and into clean-burning energy to fuel America's economy. In 2004, I read a study produced by the University of Georgia which proved that cooking oils and animal fats were superior fuels to number 4 and number 6 oils when used in industrial heating applications. Moreover, the emissions were low with waste greases when compared to number 2 fuel oil, especially with regards to sulfur and CO2 emissions. The study results motivated us to continue to refine our process, and by 2006, we were selling our recycled vegetable oil biofuel based to 2 New York City skyscrapers. Our biofuel products are approved by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency under the Renewable Fuel Standard. Our growth is dependent on feedstocks that we procure. The thought that the United States consumes over 18.5 million barrels of oil per day is daunting to an industry as new as ours. In 2010, we found an uncommon source, millions of gallons of degraded fats and oils in solid form, or what we like to call the biofuel equivalent of the Canadian tar sands. Catfish processing facilities design and build football field-sized retention ponds to collect and process their wastewater. This water, generated when the plant is washed and sanitized daily, catches all the small pieces of fats and solids that are left over in the filleting process. Over a period of years, this fat accumulates on the surface of the ponds. Upon a long competitive battle with other biofuel and rendering companies, we were awarded 100% of the bids for this accumulated fat, or a total of 10 ponds with up to 60 million gallons of regenerating feedstock, kind of a gift that keeps on giving. And that was the easy part. And now we came to the intensive process of extracting the fats and oils and turning them into one of our usable finished fuels. What we did next reminds me of one of those final tables at the World Poker Tour where the guy goes in all in with a pair of sixes. Not only did we need to put together the logistics and the colossal excavating equipment necessary to harvest the ponds, but we built 2 plants, one in Alabama and one in Mississippi, to process all that material locally. Each plant was designed to process 20 million gallons per year from a material that was the consistency of dirt. Using heat, pressure, and mechanical separation, these were technologies that we adapted from our other plants, as well as some tricks that we learned from the petroleum industry. We were able to produce a biofuel that has superior performance characteristics to current industrial heating oils. Leveraging our plants and employees, we also recently began collecting used cooking oil from the area restaurants as well, signing up 250 new accounts in our first month and paying them for a waste product that they used to pay somebody to take away. By teaming up with the catfish industry, our efforts have revitalized 2 southern towns with double-digit unemployment. Greenworks has provided over $4 million to the construction trade during the last 6 months, and hundreds of jobs have been saved in the catfish industry due to our harvesting of the oil. We've brought hope to a depressed area that was starving for work and thirsty to get behind an industry that sustains itself over the long term. We deal with ever-changing regulations around our product and its applications, which causes us concern not only for the success of our company, but for the people that believe in us. In an effort to participate in the regulatory and legislative process, we are members of the Advanced Biofuel Association, led by Mike McAdams to my right, and are represented directly by Connie Lawson. The RFS2 program was written with just transportation and home heating oil in mind. We recommend that it be expanded so that such biofuels like ours may be used in manufacturing and large-scale heating as well. Manufacturing industries use petroleum products, and many facilities need to reduce their emissions given new EPA regulations. Biofuels represent a potentially cost-effective way for the manufacturing industry to reduce harmful emissions, thus saving manufacturing jobs while simultaneously creating and preserving jobs in the biofuel industry. I thank you for this opportunity to share our ideas and innovative efforts at Greenworks Holdings.
Thank you, Mr. Tomaso. Next up is Jerry Taylor, President and CEO of MFA Oil Company and co-founder of MFA Oil Biomass, which is headquartered in Columbia, Missouri. The goal of MFA Oil Biomass is to create a vertically integrated renewable energy supply chain by combining MFA Oil's knowledge of the energy industry and markets with farming knowledge with its cooperative members. A native of Omaha, Nebraska, Jerry received a Bachelor of Science in Marketing from the University of Missouri in 1969. After serving with the U.S. Army, he spent 6 years in the banking and brokerage business. He then returned to Missouri as the owner-manager of a chain of convenience stores. Jerry joined MFA Oil in 1982 and served in several capacities before being named president in 2003. Welcome to the subcommittee, Mr. Taylor, and look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Tipton and Ranking Member Kritz and the members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the invitation to testify today. I am Jerry Taylor, President and CEO of MFA Oil Company, a farmer-owned energy cooperative in Missouri with 40,000 members. MFA Oil supplies fuels, lubricants, and propane to customers in 7 Midwestern states. Our cooperative has a long history in leading renewable fuels innovation. Starting in the 1960s, MFA Oil produced gasohol. Most recently, in the early 2000s, we ventured into the biodiesel production, and in 2008, we began writing the next chapter of our renewable energy story, the biomass. In 2011, we took a major step forward and partnered with Alloterra Energy to form MFA Oil Biomass, a separate small business with the mission of leading the cooperative into this new renewable energy field. Critical to this, as with anything we do, was to gain farmer trust and support. To ease their concerns and gain commitment, we realized that we needed to become experts in each area of our own supply chain. We are utilizing our existing knowledge in farming, energy, and commodities to form a vertically integrated renewable energy supply chain. The vertically integrated system provides farmers an energy crop source, unique harvesting and planting equipment for the crop's rhizomes, specialty harvesting services for the mature crop, processing technology, and marketing services to get the best return for the farmers and the cooperative. A key to success in any business is flexibility to respond to changing markets. So for us, a versatile feedstock was critical. Miscanthus giganteus meets that need not just as a viable feedstock, but one with incredible potential. Miscanthus is a perennial grass that is non-invasive, drought, pest-resistant, and needs less fertilizer than food crops. This translates into less runoff into the water system. The target farm is marginal or underproductive land that is not used for row crop production. At 10 to 15 tons per acre, Miscanthus more than doubles its nearest competitor in tonnage. Each ton contains about 1.5 million BTUs, which means at full maturity, each project area can produce enough energy to power 65,000 homes or 1.6 million barrels of renewable liquid fuels each year. 175 farm families have dedicated acres to this new energy crop, and we anticipate this number will grow to over 1,600 as our projects scale up to maturity at 50,000 acres per region. In liquid fuel language, this would create a 20-year reserve of 93 million barrels of liquid fuel. To avoid betting the farm on an unproven technology, we are focused on existing markets and technologies such as solid fuel pellets. We have developed a biomass furnace company and heating systems with 100 in operation today. Our future plans entail building biorefineries inside our biomass reserve areas that make multiple higher-value products that each replace part of a barrel of oil. This allows a conservative approach instead of betting our future on the success of a specific conversion technology. Beyond the quickly developing liquid fuel and bio-based chemical markets, we are implementing a model using Miscanthus to assist small towns across the U.S. in complying with EPA wastewater discharge requirements, as well as helping to reclaim mining lands. It is hard to articulate just how difficult it was and still is to educate farmers on a strange new plant called Miscanthus giganteus. This was not an attempt to plant a known crop in a new industry, but an unknown crop in a non-existent industry. Add to that a crop that at the time was too expensive to plant, and it was being planted by hand. And we were asking farmers to spend capital without a return on investment as the crop matures. However, I believe our success thus far had a lot to do with the fact that we are a farmer-owned cooperative. As a cooperative, we are able to work hand-in-hand with producers as valued, trusted business partners, allowing farmers to boost their earnings from the marketplace and diversify their income streams. Our farmer owners see incredible opportunities as this endeavor takes off. They recognize the potential to offer rural communities permanent manufacturing jobs, a new cash crop for farmers, a local source for green heating, renewable liquid fuel sources, bio-based chemicals, green building materials, water treatment systems, soil reclamation systems, and consumer packaging. Again, thank you for this opportunity to testify today, and I'd be glad to receive any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. Appreciate that. Our next witness is Michael McAdams, President of Advanced Biofuels Association. Under his leadership, the ABFA has grown to become an active partner with leaders in Washington as they work to transform our nation's energy policy by creating long-term renewable solutions that will create jobs and strengthen our energy security. Mr. McAdams has testified before Congress and the executive agencies and participates in a number of advanced biofuel forums across the country. He holds a bachelor's degree from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University and a J.D. from American University's Washington College of Law. Thank you for being with us today, Mr. McAdams. Look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Kritz, congratulations. Congressman Bartlett, I am honored to be with you this morning and proud to report to this committee and to the Congress that America's domestic advanced biofuels industry has moved from the beaker to the barrel, all in record time. And like most part of our nation's economy, small business and American ingenuity are proving to be the engine driving our success. The Advanced Biofuels Association represents over 40 of our nation's and world's leading advanced biofuels and advanced feedstock producers. Our members range in size from large household names to small and medium-sized companies. Since our inception, the Association has advocated for a level playing field when it comes to public policy, specifically calling for technology neutrality, feedstock neutrality, as well as parity in the form of any government support. Washington should not be in the business of picking winners and losers. Many of our members specifically fit within the definitions of a small business found under the current law. In fact, I'm delighted to be appearing with one of our members on the panel today, Mr. Ralph Tomaso of Greenworks Holding, a company who is delivering renewable advanced gallons today. The Association represents a wide range of technology platforms from synthetic biology and hydroprocessing to gasification, to name just a few. Our members are working on developing a wide range of feedstocks. Some are planting giant miscanthus, sugar beets, and creating cellulosic sugars from woods, grasses, and municipal solid waste, while others are planting new forms of trees and growing algae to produce agricultural-grade oils for refining. The challenge for all companies, large and small, is to build and deploy first-of-kind, new innovative technologies which will produce these new advanced biofuels. In order to be successful, these small business owners must manage the technology scale-up risk, the volatility of commodity prices, and the certainty of regulatory policy. Before we discuss policy, let me start today by sharing some of the biggest success stories we've occurred over the last year. The Air Force has flown the F-16 Thunderbirds on a mixture of advanced biofuels, and the Navy has tested advanced biofuels in ships and vehicles. The commercial sector has flown the first cross-country flight on a blend of renewable jet fuel. We have one member, Dynamic Fuels, producing 1 million gallons of renewable jet and renewable diesel a week, and have 5 members who have gone public. In addition, 2 Colorado member companies are preparing to deploy their innovative technologies this year. GEVO will produce an isobutanol, a drop-in fungible fuel. They will commission its 18 million gallon plant in June in Laverne, Minnesota, while Sundrop Fuels is on target to break ground to build a 50 million gallon cellulosic gasoline plant in Louisiana. As you can see from our membership base, there are significant opportunities to create jobs in rural America, both from the growing of the feedstocks to the deployment of the plants. To your point on innovation, we are seeing new fuels that can be blended in new ways with existing products, the opportunity to make new bioproducts, and the possibility to grow new feedstocks, which are more sustainable and more productive than the existing options. These hold the ability to create an entire new set of opportunities for farmers and landowners. Mr. Chairman, turning to policy, as you recognized in calling this hearing, there are a significant number of small business people involved in this sector. Several of our members welcome the opportunity to participate in various small business administrative programs, which we call for matching funds and leveraging. One member company has been able to leverage the pre-engineering costs with a matching contribution in assisting the building of a plant in Florida. That's a $150 million plant that's going up. Unfortunately, other companies have been unable to utilize the Small Business Administration's funding options as they've utilized large partners or were supported by venture capital organizations of scale. I have been told this prevents them from being able to access most of the funds available. Earlier, I spoke about regulatory certainty. Nothing more important to small business owners and innovators than a consistent long-term policy frame from which to build a business. For our sector, the single most important component is the Renewable Fuel Standard, passed overwhelmingly in 2007 by a bipartisan Congress and signed into law by President Bush. Although it is not perfect, it is fundamentally important to that the Congress continue to send a strong bipartisan signal of support if we wish to continue the remarkable progress and growth of an advanced biofuels industry. As for tax policy, it's been a mixed bag at best. Many of the existing provisions have already expired, and some are crafted in such a manner that they're not helpful to small business or create an uneven playing field across the entire sector. As you know, all of these are complicated by the current record of renewable and have been on a piecemeal basis for a number of years. This simply does not provide certainty on which to build a business. I want to thank you for allowing me to be here, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to answering any of your questions.
Thank you, Mr. McAdams, and I'd now like to yield to Mr. Kritz to be able to introduce our final witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Hughes is the Director of Business Development for Environmental Tank and Container, a subsidiary of JWF Industries in Johnstown. He manufactures frac tanks, mud tanks, flowback tanks, and impoundments for oil and gas companies. It now employs 450. Is that right?
No. 80.
80. Okay. 80 individuals and occupies a total of 800,000 square feet of manufacturing space. It is part of JWF Industries, which has humble roots as a two-man operation run out of a garage, and now has successfully grown into a company with 6 locations, 5 of which are located in Johnstown. Oh, I see. It's 450 across all companies. I got you.
Correct.
Recently, this success was noted by PA Business Central, which recognized it as a top 100 organization. Matt, welcome, and I look forward to your testimony.
Thank you. Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Kritz, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Matthew Hughes. I'm the Director of Business Development with Environmental Tank and Container. Going forward, I'll refer to our company as ETC. I'd like to start off by saying that our CEO, William Polachek, would like to apologize for not being able to attend today's hearing. Located in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, ETC occupies a 160,000 square foot building currently shared with our subcontractor, United Industrial. This property was originally a World War II-era munitions factory, later transformed into a railcar factory, and now houses our operations. Officially opening just over 11 months ago, ETC, like many small business startups in the oil and gas industry, owes its existence to shale energy. Each time you come across a success story like ETC's, which was born of the shale boom, you'll find many other companies like United Industrial that are getting a second chance at life. United, once tied exclusively to the commercial fabrication market, fell victim to the economic downturn in 2008 and was forced into bankruptcy. Shale energy blew life back into the almost shuttered plant, which had 3 workers in May of 2011 and was up to 80 by year's end, employing everything from engineers and welders, project managers, and salespeople. Shale energy is a rapidly changing industry with plenty of room for growth. Back in 2006, our President and CEO, William Polachek, investigated business opportunities within the Marcellus Shale. He felt like there may be opportunities down the road but didn't see a good fit at the time. Like many good entrepreneurs, he believed his hunch and kept his eye on the young industry waiting for his opportunity. It came in 2010 when some of the larger exploration and production companies announced that they were converting their Marcellus operations into closed-loop systems. The new protocol changed the method used for containing drilling waste and also outlined best practices for on-site water storage. Both initiatives created a demand for portable steel storage containers, and because ETC was a nimble small business, it was able to quickly respond to those needs. ETC answered the needs when the market asked for reliable, durable frac tanks that were leak-free and capable of withstanding the rough terrain and cold winters in Pennsylvania. ETC answered the need when drilling contractors had to store all on-site drilling fluids in tanks instead of earthen-lined pits. ETC answered the need when drillers, already slowed down by a multitude of time-consuming permitting procedures, asked for a portable above-ground water impoundments that didn't require soil disturbance permits. And we're proud to say that we're answering the call again, this time in the design and development of on-site treatment equipment that reduces the amount of frac fluid that is hauled off-site for disposal. While ETC can be credited for some innovation in our industry, we must also give credit to our customers, many of which are independent owner-operators of oilfield service companies, equipment rental firms, and engineering groups. They are first to see the need and come to us with their ideas. By virtue of opening our doors, we've created a means for many others to spur innovation and growth. Mr. Polachek always reminds us that we'll be building things a year from now that people haven't invented yet. Recently, most businesses that serve the natural gas portion of the shale industry are facing a common obstacle. The price of natural gas is now too low relative to what it costs to extract it. When you visit a natural gas well pad, attend an industry trade show, or speak with customers about future orders, the same concern arises. How will this industry continue to grow and prosper if the price of natural gas stays as low as it is? And what's frustrating to us as small businesses is that we can't fix that issue with our hard work, innovation, and resolve. The fix lies in creating and mandating demand. In closing, I ask the members of the subcommittee to be mindful of the young startup companies, the once bankrupt businesses that are rising from the ashes, and the multitude of small businesses that rely on shale energy for their livelihoods, and to consider looking into what you can do as policymakers to help increase the demand for natural gas as a cleaner fuel option for our energy sector and a cleaner fuel option for our transportation sector. Chairman Tipton, Ranking Member Kritz, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for working together in a bipartisan manner to help small businesses succeed, help fuel job growth, and to help our nation become more energy independent. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hughes, and appreciate you all staying within the time. We wouldn't really have drug you out, so but I do appreciate that. Mr. Tomaso, we'll move on to questions now, and I'd like to start with you. A common theme across all industries that we hear about in this committee is regulatory certainty and general confusion put forth in the form of government regulation. Can you talk a little bit about the regulatory process in your industry as well as the process on how some of these new fuels are categorized by the EPA?
Sure. The first thing, when we started in 2005, that was first when the biodiesel subsidy came out, where it was 50 cents for, it was a 50-cent per gallon production credit for biodiesel made from second-use oils and $1 for the virgin oils. And in any new industry, as it builds traction, you're building the customer on a one-off basis. And the way Mr. Taylor talked about building the trust with the farmers, we build the trust with our customers that this fuel is going to be here when we make the conversions to switch over from petroleum to biofuels. The uncertainty and the changes in the policy affect us because as we produce this fuel based on certain circumstances and certain economics, when they go away, we have to go away or either subsidize, basically fund those subsidies until or if they do come back. And that ends up causing a lot of disruption to our supply chain, supply flows. And we have a large logistics arm, 5 million gallons worth of storage, 60 tank cars that drive around the country on a daily basis. So when all of a sudden those subsidies go away and those customers are looking for product to be price competitive and the economics change overnight the way they have done since 2006 on and off, it does affect us very drastically.
How does the EPA categorize the fuels you produce?
Currently, we are classified as an advanced biofuel, a D5 RIN. Since the program's inception in July of 2010, the rules changed twice, and again reclassifying us twice and changing the value of our RIN. And again, this has also caused big disruption to our market.
So changing rules when the EPA does that,
no good.
That's hurting your ability to be able to grow the business.
Absolutely.
Need some certainty in there. I am curious as to the role that the Federal Government's research and development efforts have on your business. What is that community like in terms of the R&D, and does it work in partnership with small businesses?
We've had very little experience with state-run R&D or government-run R&D programs. We do a lot of all the R&D ourselves. We did employ Penn State to do private study for us, as well as we have chemical engineers that we employ that used to work in the petroleum industry that came on with a lot of industry secrets that helped us to make a better fuel.
How about you, Mr. Taylor? Are you using state, federal government R&D?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Mr. McAdams?
A lot of my members are.
Okay, great. Mr. Tomaso, I'm intrigued a little bit by the work that you're doing with these catfish hatcheries to be able to skim off the fat that is there. Where does an idea like that come from?
Oh, that was interesting. We had some sales guy that came out from Louisiana that had access to one pond. And he was very undercapitalized, didn't know the technology, and didn't have a market for the product, but had an inside track and saw it and went to the plant owner and told them about its possibility, but didn't have the means to extract it. And then when interest started to develop over this one pond, we were the only ones that had the ability to harvest it, process it, and actually find a market for it. So that's when we sent a team down there to develop that market and bid on all those other 12 ponds. And we did some experimenting. At first, we pulled loads off the ponds in a very crude manner, trucked them back to Pennsylvania, processed them down to Pennsylvania, and then sold them back to Texas into the Houston fuel market. And then from there, we developed the whole business development of going down there and going after all the 12 plants.
Yeah. Great example of American entrepreneurialism. You didn't have a bureaucrat out of Washington, D.C. come down and say, we've got a great idea. This actually came out from the working area. So
yeah, there was a mechanical contracting company that went out of business a couple of days before we got down there, and they were 60 guys ready to start manning excavating equipment, trucks, welding. It was an excellent opportunity.
Terrific. Mr. Taylor, can you explain a little bit about the differences of creating biofuels for transportation and biofuels for electrical generation?
As far as biomass is concerned.
Right.
Excuse me. Thank you. The difference, in at least the approach that we've taken, is to produce the biomass is our sort of the first thing we had to do. And we're actually creating a number of paths with relationships, both towards cellulosic, which would take the crop in some form or fashion into their process, or densifying it into pellets, but more of almost a biomass, kind of a biorefinery. Some of it could be building products and other things, but those channels we see as we have a multiple of channels that we're putting in play to be able to maximize the value of the crop, which is the #1 thing as a farmer-owned cooperative we're trying to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that gets to it. And just kind of going back to the catfish, because we've heard of being able to take French fry oil and be able to operate a vehicle. Are you doing some experimenting with that? You'd mentioned using it for heating.
My partner, I originally come out of the restaurant business in New York City, where there's a large heating oil, industrial heating oil #4, #6 market.
Right.
My partner, Dave Dunham, started in the trucking industry. He actually started collecting used cooking oil and converting his father's tractor trailers to run on vegetable oil to lower the gas. In the long term, running raw vegetable oils in transportation is not a viable option. We developed the market to run large industrial applications, power plants, universities, as well as district heating plants to run on our fuels.
Mr. Chairman, if I could come back and kind of tie that question with your first question. I'm going to get in the weeds just a second, because I think it makes the point that both of these gentlemen are trying to make. So, for instance, if he tries to use a hardwood to make pellets or to make biopower, he has no problem. But if we go into the transportation fuels industry and we want to build a $500 million cellulosic plant and make a drop-in renewable jet fuel from wood, the definitions under the RFS are incredibly prescriptive. If Ralph wants to take his catfish oil, he has to have a determination from the EPA that specifically says it's a waste. Now, this is a problem. This is a term of art, waste. What is a waste? Well, waste is something that has no value. So as I try to certify fuels on behalf of my 43 different members, every single feedstock has to go under the RFS and be determined whether it's certified under the law, which means many of his feedstocks have had to be singly submitted for their greenhouse gas reductions, the only law in America that regulates greenhouse gases for each of the 4 categories. And if the EPA doesn't determine that his molecule is a pure hydrocarbon molecule, then he's not a D4 RIN, he's a D5 RIN, and the difference is $1. Now, that's a big difference. Yeah. So the devil is in the details here, and in defense of the EPA, the statute was prescriptive in some way when we originally wrote it in 2007, and that is because, candidly, the incumbent industry had been around longer and people understood it. I'm not criticizing the incumbent industry, but as we move forward, one of the challenges for our association and for all the guys sitting at this table is to have a level playing field so all of these different molecules can come in and lower the cost for the American driving consumer, whether it's diesel, jet, or gasoline. And we still have impediments in the regulatory structure that we're working on today. And I'm hoping that we can get some of these rules through OMB, such as the heating oil rule that would expand the market for Ralph, or the commingling rule that would allow the Colorado butanol company to deploy its fuel, which you can't now. Those are the kinds of things I think that you're trying to drive at.
You bet. No, appreciate those comments. Mr. Taylor, in regards to some of the federal research and development efforts, are they being focused in the right areas?
The areas that we have participated in have been very specific. State of Missouri, through a small business, rural small business grants, was a study, for example, done on which energy crop would be the best for Missouri. We were the lead on that study. Miscanthus was the chosen crop, and we've had 2 studies since that point. So we've utilized 3 different studies sponsored by the State of Missouri Small Business Administration.
Okay. Great. Mr. McAdams, there seems to be a pretty rapid breakthrough in technology in a variety of different fields that are out there. You were just speaking to it a bit, but could you estimate where most of these innovations have come from? I think you spoke to it just a second ago.
Private sector.
It's all the private sector.
It is private sector. Now, I will say I was the keynote speaker at NREL this year. Very talented group. The government has a good facility and a consortium they built at the Department of Energy to try to help lower the cost of testing different enzymatic reactions, and that's been helpful. I think there are 38 members of the consortium. But a lot of this is privately financed, and a lot of these guys have been at it for 5 years. What I'm really proud to say is when the private sector focuses on innovation and they're trying to make $1 at it, they do it real quickly and they do it economically efficient. And so that is why it's so important that a framework like the RFS, or a tax code if you choose to have one, is neutral and lets a level playing field so we can raise the capital to actually fund the targeted R&D that each of these technologies need.
Going back to some of your previous comments, would you be recommending that Congress play a more vigorous role in terms of oversight of EPA, in terms of having common sense regulations that are coming into play?
I think it's always a good conversation that the executive agencies have with the U.S. Congress. Over my tenure in Washington, I found that the dialogue actually helps focus the mind and that it brings an opportunity to really ask questions. Sometimes in the legislative process, we don't have the time to get into some of the weeds, and what we've done constitutionally is we delegated a lot of these specific decisions to the agencies. And I think it's really important that Congress have a very vigorous and active role in making sure that the statutes, their content and their intent is met. And I like that dialogue personally. So I would encourage you to do that, and I think there's a lot of opportunities to expedite the deployment of these technologies through that dialogue.
Great. You know, the renewable fuel standards has been set at 36 billion gallons of biofuels to be inserted into the transportation fuel pool by 2022. Is that a realistic goal?
I think that it was a very optimistic stretch target. And so what we see is the flexibility that was built into the statute. I commend the Congress for the flexibility they built in with the off-ramps. What you have in terms of specific application now of the statute is you saw, for instance, the cellulosic pool number was lowered over 90% in 2011. The pool was also lowered over 90% in 2012, and they were getting ready to make a recommendation in 2013. This has been an incredibly difficult economic market, and the economic market didn't match up with the stretch targets that were put in the statute. So I now have many members that are planning to bring to market. We're really beginning to see some of the cellulosic sector come in and try to meet these mandates. What EPA is allowed to do is to gift some of those gallons into the advanced pool. Big question on whether they could gift it into the biomass-based diesel pool. I agree with the National Biodiesel Board that moving forward, there's a great opportunity to raise the billion-gallon ceiling on the biomass-based diesel pool. We could probably do upwards of 2 billion gallons between now and 2022. And if that's backing out foreign oil, I think everybody from the executive branch to the legislative branch ought to look at that and what opportunities you have to kind of move some of these buckets around.
Right. Mr. Tomaso, Mr. Taylor, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I do, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I think there's another piece to it as far as some of the environment we've been in over the last few years. We've been oil refining since 1939. We know the commodity pretty well. This economic vacuum of the last 3 or 4 years was also accompanied by crude oil reaching a high in July of 2008 at $147 and hitting somewhere in the low 30s by the summer of 2009, gutted most, if not any, desire to be in renewables and risk your own money. This belief now, one of the reasons we're an 83-year-old organization, our belief and the reason we've entered it is because we believe that generally global BTU prices have gone to another level in general, and consequently lowered the bar, so to speak, for renewables. Hence, we've entered it. It is, I think, paramount to let programs work. Now the environment is correct. As we come out of the sort of the economic vacuum we've been in, global prices are up and likely to stay. Gives now the right environment if time is lent. And that includes the BCAP programs for biomass, which we implemented very successfully. It is a very good program, and we believe our model is almost the poster child for success in that. It helped the farmer plant get over the hump while we made the investment in environmental assessments, equipment, processes, plants, all of those types of things. All of those things are now in play because of those two things, a recovering economy and a higher fuel global BTU price. Let the programs work now.
Right.
Yep, I concur.
Good. Okay. Mr. Hughes, didn't want to leave you out, but can you describe the new technology that is in frac tanks and elaborate on how these tanks can mitigate some of the fears and risks associated with fracking?
Yes, sir. I know for a fact that our facility, when we manufacture our tanks, we don't differentiate on quality. Some of the same gentlemen that are welding on military vehicles are also welding on these tanks. So we practice the utmost integrity when we're working on them. I think one of the bigger parts that needs to be understood is the oil and gas operators have implemented pretty much their own best practices, self-implemented them, and have gotten away from a lot of the in-ground impoundments and have moved over to hard-side portable tanks, which makes it a lot easier to manage the fluid through all courses of the operation.
Great. You know, as you may well be aware, in the West we have plentiful natural gas. We definitely need the jobs. As you note, we need to do it in a responsible way to be able to achieve that. With the pricing that we have, we've got a real challenge. Do you see a pathway to be able to make the production of natural gas literally more viable in this country?
Well, as you know, in our section, as Mr. Kritz knows, that the majority of the Marcellus sits over a dry gas, and we're moving more west towards where there's fluids that come up with the actual dry gas. Most of these operators need probably about 500 barrels of fluids that come up with their gas production per day in order to offset the very low prices that are in place right now for the dry gas. But as far as a path, I believe that we need to really focus on base loading our energy sector to be able to use that gas to generate electricity. And I know that's what a lot of the larger oil and gas companies, Exxon for one, is forecasting out to 2030, sorry, that the majority of increase for natural gas will come from electric generation.
Right. You know, you may not have seen it. It just came out headlines this morning where EPA official apologizes for the call to crucify oil companies. Is that going to give some pause? Because it does need to be all of the above. We need all of these energy sources. Are we seeing an overreach again by the EPA?
I would say yes, sir.
Great. I concur. So I'd now like to yield to Mr. Kritz for his questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And since the Chairman ended with you, Matt, we'll start with you. And it's a pretty straightforward questions I have. It's, you know, the innovation taking place in the gas industry has had a profound impact on Pennsylvania. Can you talk about how, and you talked about Bill Palachuk and ETC is able to seize on these opportunities. What is it that you saw, and how is it that you got into this business so quickly? And I'm thrilled to hear the Chairman talking about the gas that's in Colorado, too, because they need your tanks, too. But that's for another conversation. But
we'll be visiting them soon.
Okay. But if you would, just sort of walk through the process, how you end up here.
Sure. We are a contract metal fabricator. Mr. Palachuk's been in business since 1987. He started in a two-car garage and now employs close to 450 people. And our main facility, JWF Industries, occupies just a little under 1 million square feet. Mr. Palachuk's very entrepreneurial and did, as I mentioned earlier, keep his eye on this business. And when it first started, there was not very much opportunity for metal fabrication. They dug a lot of pits, they lined them, they stored their water in the pits, they stored their drill cuttings in the pits, they stored their drill mud in the pits. Those have been highly, well, I don't want to say highly regulated, but they've self-policed themselves, realized what the oil, you know, what they had to do in order to make things good, in order to proceed forward with the drilling operations and minimize the amount of environmental impact. When they imposed those, that's when we got involved, and that's when Bill actually was able to seize the opportunity. We are what we consider a mid-range producer. Most of the companies that we compete against are down in the Texas, Louisiana area, and they produce in very high volumes. What we saw in the market was an opportunity to produce a very good quality product at a medium volume and then answer the needs to the innovations that are required in order to keep growing this business. So we had several companies come to us and ask us if we could customize a particular tank, tweak it, or actually help them design it to be more functional for what they do. And as I mentioned, we're actually getting involved with one particular company. It was a great story. A very young engineer walked into our office and had a good idea regarding a water clarification system in order to clean the residual frac fluid on site, which eliminates the amount of transportation, eliminates the amount of trucking, and also it eliminates the amount of water that is needed to begin the subsequential fracking processes. And it's that kind of innovation that we were open to. So that's basically what we are very well known for in the industry, is our ability to adapt the innovation and be able to be flexible enough to work with some of the smaller companies.
You made me think of a company you guys need to talk to. So, but that's for another conversation. But no, and I remember talking with Bill too about the quality, and you mentioned it, that your welders are doing military applications, but they're also doing these, and that's also been part of your success, is that these tanks are top notch, and there's no failure in any of these weld joints or anything. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Okay. Aquatech. Remember Aquatech. Mr. Tomaso, I'm absolutely astounded, baffled, interested in this catfish pond. I guess reclamation. I don't even know what you would call it. You say it's a football field size pond that has. And I was looking through because I wasn't sure if I heard it correctly. Is the material that you want 3 to 10 feet deep, or are the ponds 3 to 10 feet deep?
No, the ponds are 100 feet wide by 300 feet long by 30 feet deep.
30 feet deep, okay.
And as they are sanitizing and washing down the plants every day, they're using about 3 million gallons of water, of which about 2% is fats and solids every day. So all that goes into this pond. The solids float to the bottom. The water stays in the middle, and the fats rise to the surface. And over the course of approximately 3 years, you have a cap on these ponds of 3 to 10 feet deep.
Wow, it's amazing. I'm just trying to envision a football field
It's
with
the first
3
time
to 10 feet worth of fat.
when that salesman came to me with a jar of this fat, and it's, the odor was horrendous, and it was a sight to see, and he was showing us pictures, and it didn't do it justice until you flew down there and were standing in front of this pond.
That's amazing. Now, this isn't, you've never been on that show, Dirtiest Jobs or something?
No, as of yet, no, not.
I was listening to your testimony, and it just really threw me just because of the massive size of this thing. But the one question I do have for you is that converting used fryer oil to biofuels is, I guess, an old-fashioned process. And that someone has to collect the oil from restaurants. How challenging is it to manage the collection process and keep your costs at a level that you actually are making money on this?
We had the benefit of starting in other industries. So we came without any bad habits, and we started with technology. And we currently have over 40 trucks that go out every day to restaurants. We collect from about 17,000 restaurants in 12 states. And we use UPS logistics. We use satellite technology. We use tablets in the trucks. We have live data knowing how much is in each truck, what's the volumes, and we use the same technology that companies like UPS and Federal Express do to get this piece of paper across the country overnight for $12.
Okay, all right, thank you.
It is a massive massive undertaking.
Well, that's what I mean. Restaurants are dotted all over the place. So I mean, just managing
That's
that.
why these ponds were easy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess, and once you have your delivery route or your pickup route, it's just a route. It's truck route. Okay, all right. Mr. Taylor, you work with nearly 200 family farms, and you anticipate scaling up to 1,500. Now, agriculture is still the #1 industry in Pennsylvania. So, and there are a lot of small family farms. What are some of the benefits and challenges you face in working with so many of these family-owned farms?
I don't know what I'd do without you. The MFA oil biomass, which we own 60% of, Alloterra owns 40% of. Alloterra really brought the miscanthus expertise, feedstock, and a number of expertise. What we bring to the table is logistics. We're the 7th largest propane retailer in the country.
Okay.
And we've started several companies.
And you do sort of exchange. Is that correct, that you deliver propane and pick up the stuff that you need, or is that's not part of it?
No, what we've done,
I'm putting too much
just to give you an example,
Sure.
a real-life example, Southwest Missouri, it's big chicken, poultry country.
Okay.
We have a group of growers. Average grower might have 6 houses, might use 20,000 gallons of propane in a year to heat those houses at $1.60 approximately. That grower grows 15 acres on his farm of miscanthus with a number of growers. We've built a processing plant in the center to pick that up and pelletize it with our delivery trucks. We take it back and put it into the feed bins. They have a system for feeding it into the furnaces, which we build now in southern Missouri. We build those furnaces. We have over 100 locations now. And his cost, we essentially can guarantee him a equivalent cost of about 80 to 90 cents a gallon propane, about half of what he's paying now. And obviously a very small delta with energy input, because all you're doing is harvesting it once a year.
Right, right.
So it is truly the economic effect. And that farm, that means approximately close to $20,000.
Oh.
And that's significant.
Yeah.
The bottom line effect turns out to be about $400 an acre net profit improvement if they use miscanthus per acre.
Well, and you said you're on the logistics side. Is that your so? My next question was about the Department of Agriculture's Biomass Crop Assistance Program, and I think it's been important to the growth of your industry. Can you discuss where it would be if this funding source hadn't been available?
Yes, I can. I call it perspectives. I think in the sovereign world we call it the ruling or whatever it is. When BCAP came out, in the opening paragraph that I read, when I read this, the opening paragraph said we have a chicken and an egg problem. Farmers won't grow it because they don't even know the equipment to handle it. Plants won't locate in the places because nobody's growing it. It was a chicken and egg problem. What we witnessed firsthand with BCAP was an absolute resolution of that chicken and egg problem. When we received BCAP funding for approximately 13,000 acres, our first 13,000 acres, and we're now just finishing up that planting process, there were a number of things we had to do. Most people that are in the rhizome business or in the miscanthus business want rhizomes as high as possible. We want costs as low as possible. So what we had to do is spend a year multiplying the rhizomes, or a couple, 3 years, multiplying the rhizomes to get the cost down per acre from $1,400. In our BCAP program, we're at $750. This year on the 2012 budget, we hope we'll be at $550. We hope in another year we'll have driven that down to $300 an acre to establish that. That would have been impossible without BCAP funding the bridge, getting the bridge for the farmer, because the money didn't come to us. The money goes to the farmer to plant the crop. It takes 3 years for it to mature, massive tonnage. So you have rhizome costs coming down. On the other hand, you've got to have time to develop the logistics. 2 years ago, all the rhizomes were being planted with people on the backs of the wagons dropping rhizomes down chutes. We have now, MFAO Biomass has partnered with an English company. We're now making the planters in Kansas. We have 24 of them are now off the line. We have purchased and have in fields planting plants, 4-row planter, 5 miles an hour. That's 40 acres a day per planter. That is doable, and we think we can now go to an 8-row. So we're going to be pushing 80. And keep in mind, the industry just 2 years ago was at 5 acres a day with 4 people on a planter. So this is so new. Trying to work out those systems to get the efficiency, not just efficiencies, to work out any system that will work, is happening because BCAP was available. The important thing with BCAP is it doesn't take just 1 year. The funding is critical to bridge the people that are already started on that path, to get them a year or 2 or 3, as it was originally designed, to be able to 3 years, to be able to let these things play out. Yeah. Our game plan is absolutely to be on our own the 4th year. We needed 3 years of help from BCAP. You only went from $280 million or whatever it was down to $17 million this year, and who knows for 13. It's critical, we think, to bridge that gap for the farmer, because it's an unknown entity at this point. We now have broken that chicken and egg problem because of BCAP.
Mr. McAdams, did you want to weigh in?
I just want to say it's one of the top priorities of the association. We represent Freedom, which is a giant miscanthus grower out of Georgia. Okay. We're hoping to see them plant.
We represent Freedom, too.
You bet you do. They're looking at trying to do 30,000 acres. They're currently right now working with some folks. They actually have helped Altria in terms of their planting. Congressman Kingston was pivotal last year in putting some level of funding, $17 million, into the approps process for the BCAP program. I'm not real optimistic in the House Farm Bill process, but we're hoping this morning over in the Senate Farm Bill that they'll restore a higher level of funding. It is key for us to have certified feedstocks, which these would be, available to make the gallons. Yes. And it is a chicken and egg problem. I think he's laid it out beautifully.
Okay. You have in your testimony, and this is, I'm going to show my lack of knowledge here, and I want to circle back around, something called Miscanthus giganteus, which is, I think, what we're talking about. Now, back in my part of the world, there's people talking about something called switchgrass as a feedstock. Now, what are you describing, and where is switchgrass something that's in a temperate zone or something? Because I saw that where you can grow this Miscanthus giganteus is really a wide range of areas. So can you explain to me exactly what that is?
Sure. Well, let me say that the administration put together a biomass council to look at where you have various feedstocks available to support an advanced biofuels industry. And the conclusion of that was you could grow different feedstocks in different areas, and that it wasn't a one-size-all model, you know. And so one of the great things about giant miscanthus is that you can grow this in row crop land, so kind of loamy soils that you wouldn't grow corn or cotton or anything else on. So you can take unproductive land and you can turn that into a real high yield crop on a per acre basis. Yeah. If you look in Oklahoma, switchgrass was a natural field grass in Oklahoma. If you look in Colorado, you got a lot of beetle kills. So if we could get the definitions right in terms of what woods we could use, my, what a tremendous opportunity you would have to deploy cellulosic plants in Colorado. So I think this is one of the areas as we look moving forward, this is one of the areas where we could probably do a little better fine-tuning, either regulatorily, particularly regulatorily as we move forward.
Okay. Mr. Chris, may I add one comment to that?
Absolutely.
We use a specific clone called the Illinois clone, which is a sterile plant. It has no seeds. It's not invasive. Because we're farmers, we understand multiflora rose or any number of other plants that have been invasive. We thought that was a critical thing, and one of the to be non-invasive. So it's a sterile, non-seeded plant. We had to prove that in our EA under NEPA when we did that. One of the reasons that crop is, number one, is its tonnage. One of the reasons it wasn't done is because you're planting it with rhizomes. And now that we've solved a pretty good share of the problems with the handling of the rhizomes, propagating them, digging them up, and doing it, that cost is what has come down significantly.
Oh, good, good. Mr. McAdams, you testified, or in your testimony, you discussed the benefits, but also the challenges with using SBA investment programs. Mm-hmm. How important is equity investment in venture capital to the future of renewable fuels?
Well, obviously, it's very important. Let me just start there, but let me say it depends on where the company is in its cycle. So if I'm a new company coming into the market for the first time, probably the VC world is pretty important. Yeah. And again, if you look at some of the more successful, more known companies in this space, they came out of the VC industry, right? Some of the smaller ones that aren't at that stage, I think the Small Business Administration could really help them specifically in the SBIR programs, some of the research and development monies. I was really delighted to get the example for this hearing today about the pre-engineering costs. This is a guy with less than 10 employees that has a very novel technology that they're trying to deploy in Florida, and that helped him leverage what is about to be a $150 million facility. The loan was $3.5 million. It came out of the state program from the 2010 funding out of SBA to kick it off. So I think it's a combination of things, and it really depends on what is the size of the company. Obviously, companies like DuPont have a different way to finance things than Ralph Tomaso. So I see them all in all sizes, and again, it's not one size fits all.
Okay. Well, you mentioned something earlier about D4 and D5, which is, you're talking a different language to me. So I want, at some point, I have Janelle Noel for my staff that you come in and talk about what that is so that I have a better understanding of it. And just one closing comment. You know, it's great to hear all this stuff because our subcommittee's Ag and Energy. So it's really interesting to hear everything that's going on. I was at a Steel Caucus hearing in Pittsburgh last week, and we were talking about the price of natural gas. It's whatever it is, $2.20, $2.30 right now. That the natural gas industry says that once the LNG plants are up along the border and we start exporting, that it's probably going to hit about $5 to $6 a cubic foot. And that's the sweet spot for them. So as the dry gas, and you're right, we're sitting on a lot of dry gas, but we're getting to this wet gas area now. So that's the figure that I'm keeping in my head because certainly we want manufacturing and everything going on. So with that, Mr. Chairman, came to Pittsburgh with me last week. He's taking credit for my big victory on Tuesday, and as long as he treats me nice, I'll give him all the credit he wants. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kritz. I'd now like to recognize Mr. King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the witnesses for your testimony. And there have been a lot of things illuminated here in this discussion and testimony and the Q&A afterwards. I think there's a place to go that we ought to examine from a public policy standpoint, and it caught my interest when I see Mr. McAdams' testimony on the F-16s. And I'll tell the narrative as I know it and then ask you to respond accordingly. I happen to be in a position where some of this information comes into my ears that doesn't get published, and I'll tell it the way it is this way, is that the Pentagon decided that they wanted to have, by my narrative, an F-18 that they would fly at Mach 1 and do so on biofuels. And so in order to create the biofuels necessary for the biojet fuel, a 50-50 blend, biodiesel and regular jet fuel, they didn't want to apparently take a few thousand gallons from a regular biodiesel producer, but instead went to Pennsylvania to raise some algae in the dark that came from the bottom of the ocean where the sun doesn't penetrate, and in tanks with an individual there that had the skills and the ability to do that. And then they needed to feed it something. So they found some condemned sugar from sugarcane in Louisiana, took it to Pennsylvania, fed it to the algae, looked around to see how do we extrude the biodiesel out of this algae. Well, let's send it to Iowa, and we extrude the biodiesel. They did that, shipped it out to Edwards Air Force Base, put it in an F-16, and flew it at Mach 1. Now, it seems to me to be a lot of let's say, gyrations to go through. It appears that they wanted to avoid the criticism of food versus fuel. As I listen to the testimony here in the Q&A, I haven't heard that come up. I'm concerned that that could be a significant barrier within the mind of the administration if the Pentagon itself could go to such great lengths to accomplish something that would have been done much easier in far less period of time. Mr. McAdams, do you have any experience with that? Do you have a comment on that?
I'm very aware of the certification process of the military. I've been working very closely as an association head on behalf of my members with the military, the Air Force, and the Navy. We are incredibly supportive of the MOU that was released last year that calls for funding the $510 million program between the Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Defense.
Are they wasting money trying to avoid the food versus fuel argument?
I would say our association supports a technology and feedstock neutral approach. I would be delighted to share with you the letter that we gave to Senator McCain on this subject about 3 weeks ago in reference to his questions to our association on how that matter went down.
Is it your understanding that it went down any differently than I described it?
I'm not sure I know that example. They recently did a 450,000-gallon purchase. That also involved an algae company.
But use the expression feedstock neutral.
Well, when I use the expression feedstock neutral, what I'm talking about is if you scope a specific solicitation and you require something specifically, that's not feedstock neutral. And so what you have a propensity to do is you're trying to pick a feedstock winner, right? And so our association's been feedstock neutral since the beginning. What you were talking about was a specific remat to use a percentage of algae in a specifically made jet fuel. And let me just correct you on one thing with all due respect, sir. You can't use biodiesel to make jet. Biodiesel has an oxygen in it. It's 11% oxygen. So when you make jet fuel, you're going to use a hydrocarbon only. Jet fuel is the most narrowly prescriptive fuel coming out of the oil industry or coming out of the renewable industry. So it's a very tightly confined spec.
Is it possible to process the biodiesel so that you can use it?
You can take.
And is it more cost effective than the method I described?
You could take the feedstock, right, and you could take Ralph's catfish oil, or you could take white greases or brown greases, and depending on the technology you use, which is generally hydroprocessing and isomerization, you can make a jet fuel out of renewables. You can also take oils out of algae and process it into a jet fuel. The cost of the range of feedstocks varies. They're not all the same cost.
I would think it would be substantially higher in the method that I described.
I think
and it just certainly would be
correct.
Thank you. And there's more to be drilled into here, but I wanted to turn to Mr. Thomas before I ran out of time because you intrigued me with 10 feet of catfish fat on a 100 by 300 foot area. That's I don't know, 1,000, 1,100 cubic yards of fat from where I come from. That's a lot of fat, and I didn't think of catfish as being fat.
They kill a lot of catfish.
And it just is intriguing to me that we have 30% of our young people are obese, even to the point where the former Secretary of Defense said it was a national security issue. And if we can process, and we're all innovators here, so if we can process, this is a bit of a facetious question, you can see it coming, but if we can process catfish fat into energy, biodiesel for example, has anybody given any thought on how you convert all that extra human weight that the First Lady's trying to reduce into something that could be usable energy?
I think I've seen a movie on that where they turned it into soap, but it was, no, there is a lot of fat in the catfish industry is shrinking Number one, due to the changing taste of the consumers trying to reduce their fat, as well as cheaper exports coming out of Southeast Asia. So every catfish plant is trying to grab a bigger piece of a shrinking pie. So that industry is in dire straits.
It is true that we had a surgeon in California that was collecting that human fat and converting it into biodiesel and burning it in his car. And someone thought there was an ethical problem with that. I did not. I thought it was a pretty good utilization of human energy. So my clock has run out, and I thank all the witnesses, and I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. King. Again, I'd like to thank all of our witnesses for their testimony and input today. Very interesting when we're hearing the comments, starting in a garage. Just held a jobs fair down in Alamosa, Colorado, and a young man was describing some work that he's doing on a fuel cell. And interesting just watching and observing around the room. There was some skepticism. There were others that were very intrigued with what it was, and couldn't help but bring to mind a guy named Steve Jobs, who did pretty well with Apple starting out of his garage. And I think these are American energy solutions that we need to be pursuing. So energy production is vital for our nation's economic and national security. And in most industries in the U.S., small businesses are the catalyst that drive innovation and new and better technology. New technology that harnesses energy that we did not have the capabilities to be able to use before. There are many exciting developments in the biofuel, wind, solar, and hydroelectric industries, and new technology development not only moves us toward that all-of-the-above energy policy and greater energy independence, but also grows our economy and jobs. This has been a very interesting hearing. I think the catfish fat probably took the cake for most people. And we do look forward to following these advancements in the coming months and working with my colleagues to be able to expand energy production in the United States. It is that important for us. I ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days to be able to submit statements and supporting materials for the record. Without any objections, so ordered, and the hearing is now adjourned. Thank you again, gentlemen.